So recently I figured out that Nike is the biggest sportswear brand in the world. You see, in 2021, Nike made $44.53 billion in revenue, while that same year, Adidas made $25 billion. The question is, how did Nike go from not even existing when Adidas was at its prime to now being worth more than Adidas and Puma combined? Welcome, my dear viewers, to another Know It Show video. After World War II, Japan faced two options. Option 1 is to grow Japan and make it great economically, or option 2, that is to follow option 1. They only really had one option. And so because of this, the Japanese miracle happened. A period in time when Japan was growing economically at a rapid pace, to the point where now Japan has the third largest economy in the world. And during this Japanese recovery stage, a young entrepreneur by the name of Hashiro Onitsuka shows up out of nowhere. He saw the love that Japanese people had towards American sports at that time, and so he used it as an opportunity to make shoes. However, the shoes that he made weren't big, or I should say they weren't really successful. Until one day he was eating an octopus salad and he was amazed about how the octopus moved and how the octopus was stuck to the side of the bowl and refused to get removed. And so he thought, let me just make a basketball shoe with traction. And because of this, the Onitsuka Tiger was made. The Japanese people loved this new shoe. Finally, he did something successful. He grew and grew to the point where he has a factory, employees, and also a name in Japan. But wait, Rashid, didn't you say that this is about Nike? How does somebody eating a squid and making a shoe out of it have to do anything with Nike? Well, I was just getting to that point. You see, if you just waited a little. You see, in the early 1960s, the management team in the Onitsuka Tiger found themselves in a situation. Now, in this situation, a young American came to their office and said, "Hey, what's up, man?" And he wanted to speak business with Onitsuka Tiger. And his name is Phil Hampson Knight, or was known as Buck. "You American come to us to do business? Well, then open the conference room and bring him an octopus salad, a fresh one, and we will see what he wants. But before we see what he wants, we should know who he is." Buck was an American athlete, born in Oregon. He spent most of his life wanting to become a professional athlete, and so during his years in college, he joined the track team. The coach of that track team in Oregon was none other than Bill Bowerman, a legendary coach. A coach that led the 1972 American Olympics team and won 6 gold medals. However, Buck wasn't really the best athlete of the team. And so he graduated from college and he went to get his master's degree at Stanford. Now, he graduated from Stanford, but he found himself in a sticky situation. He spent years of his life in school, and now he faces the real world. But he doesn't really know what to do in the real world, because his dream of becoming a professional athlete is gone. And now he's faced with two options. And unlike Japan, he truly had two options. The first option is to work a regular desk job like everyone else. Get paid by the week or by every 2 weeks, and you know that if you work this much amount of hours, you're gonna get this much amount of money. Or option 2, do something so risky that you might fail and lose all your money. And he picked the best option for him. That was the second option. Well, I guess someone likes to be different. But now what will he do? He remembered the research paper that he wrote in Stanford. His idea was to sell Japanese-made shoes in America. Why would he sell Japanese shoes in America? And so because Japan was very cheap to make stuff in and send stuff out, it would be cheaper than every product in the market. And he did that. He went to Japan and he talked with Onitsuka Tiger to make this happen. And so let us jump back to the conference room in Onitsuka Tiger. The squid came in front of him. He started eating it. After he finished eating it, he started talking about how he can sell their shoes in America. But he needed to speak as if he was a company. But he didn't have a company. And so 30 seconds before he started talking to them, he made up a company. That company name was Blue Ribbon. Can you imagine you're talking to one of the biggest brands in Japan at that time and you just made up a company? And so he convinced them that he really made a company named Blue Ribbon and continued with the conference. They spoke about how they needed to sell their products in America and how they could undermine every single German shoe brand, which were Adidas and Puma. But there was a problem. Onitsuka really wasn't convinced. So Buck told them, since it's cheaper to make shoes in Japan and it's cheaper to ship them out, you can sell the product cheaper than anything made at that market with good quality. And so the management of the Onitsuka Tiger loved this idea. And so Buck bought samples of the shoe that he was going to sell. So he set sail and he went across the world. Yes, he was planning a trip at the same time that he went to Japan. He actually planned it before going to Japan. And when he finished the trip, he went back to Oregon. And so he waited and waited until one day a cardboard box showed up with a label named from Japan. He opened the box and he found 12 shoes in there. He spent 1 or 2 hours daydreaming on how great he will be. And then after he was done with that, he sent 2 pairs to his former coach. To Buck, Bill's opinion is very important. And if Bill says that it's a great idea, then it will sell. Because Bill's ideas with shoes are very cool. And they help the athlete train and run. And so a box arrived at Bill's house. Bill opened the box. He looked inside and he found 2 shoes. Well, 2 pairs of shoes. And after he found these 2 shoes, he took them out, checked them out, and said, wow, this is a great shoe. He liked the shoe to the point where he wrote to Buck saying, hey, I will be at Oregon shortly and we need to meet up talking about the shoe. When Bill and Buck met up, Bill showed Buck how much he loved this idea and how much he wanted to be the partner in this idea. And Buck was very happy with this because he got the person that he idolizes when it comes to shoes to be his partner. And now he has a good relationship with the Onitsuka Tiger and a good partner. Life is just going his way. But it gets even better. Bill and Buck agrees to both spend $500 into buying pairs of shoes. Together, they amounted to $1,000, which at the time could buy them 300 pairs of shoes. And now they have 300 pairs of shoes in front of them in Oregon. And now they have to sell these 300 shoes to the people. And luckily they did this at an amazing time because within 4 months, the stock has been sold. And so as a great businessman, they went and bought more. They bought 900 more actually. And Buck wanted to expand the company. He wanted to go to San Francisco, Los Angeles. However, he had one thing that he needed to do. And that thing was to get an employee. Why would he need an employee? Well, they needed someone to sell shoes better than them. And in comes Jhonson. Who's Jeff Jhonson? Jeff Jhonson is their first employee. And it turns out he was a great add to Blue Ribbon. Because within 10 months, he sold 3,250 pairs of shoes. Can you imagine that? 3,250 shoes in 10 months. You see when I told you that he was a great add to Blue Ribbon? But at that time, Blue Ribbon was facing a problem. The bankers that were giving money to Buck and Blue Ribbon thought that the company was growing too fast for Buck's equity. Well, why is that? You see, Buck wasn't a traditional businessman. Every dollar that he made in revenue for himself, he would take that and put it back into the company. And so he has no cash flow outside the company. Well, why do you need cash flow outside the company? Well, you need cash flow outside the company just in case if the company goes backwards, you have money to help it. And when you don't have money to help it, the company will just go backwards. But that wasn't the only problem that he faced. The other problem that he faced was that on Onitsuka Tiger, their shoes were coming in late. And when the shoes come in late, you sell them later. And when you sell them later, the money comes in later. So everything's just late. And this is a big problem. And so now they are facing with 2 different problems. One is the cash flow, and 2 is them being late. And so at that time, Buck can only fix one problem. That problem was the cash flow. And so he went and got another job. He was working as a CPA in a small firm called PwC. Hold on, let me hear that. PwC? You see, PwC wasn't a small firm and still isn't a small firm. It is one of the biggest financial firms in the world at that time and still to this day. And it was good that he worked there because he saw the ins and outs of how businesses work financially. And he saw the biggest mistake that he was making, cash flow. He didn't keep enough cash outside. And Blue Ribbon started to grow. And when they started to grow, Blue Ribbon finally gave Buck his salary. And so Buck received his salary and left PwC. He gained more employees and life looked very good for Mr. Buck. Then after that, he needed to go back to Japan to sign a new contract with Onitsuka Tiger. However, he did smell something a little fishy in the contract. I think it was a squid that he ate in the beginning. Get it? Squid? Fishy? It's funny. Keep that one in the books. But it was actually fishy. You see, the contract was too short, and Buck felt like he needed more. However, he did need to grow the company, so he said, all right, I'll sign. But the problem was that Onitsuka Tiger actually didn't like Blue Ribbon. Onitsuka Tiger wanted to get rid of Blue Ribbon, actually. But Buck convinced Onitsuka Tiger to stay with Blue Ribbon. However, that wasn't the end, my dear viewer. No, you see, Onitsuka Tiger actually wanted to buy 51% of Blue Ribbon and keep Buck at the same place where he started at. And that is what I call a bad business move. Or truly, it's just business. And it's cruel. And so Buck said, hold up. Wait a minute, I need to talk to my partner. So Buck went to Bill and they talked and they came up with a plan. And that plan was to make their own brand of shoes. And now no one can control them because it's their shoes. But hold on, isn't this a breach of contract? It's not, because Onitsuka Tiger is only in tennis and running shoes. However, Buck wanted to make his own shoes in football or soccer. You see, he was a cheeky young fella. I can't believe I just said cheeky young fella. The question you should be asking yourself here is, how did they make the football shoes? Buck remembered a factory in Mexico that Adidas used to manufacture shoes from. And so he remembered that and said to himself, I will go there and order shoes from them. But they needed a logo and a name because they can't use Blue Ribbon. And so they had to pick a new name. But more importantly, they had to pick a good logo. And that's where Carolyn Davidson comes into play. You see, Carolyn Davidson was a college designer that helped Blue Ribbon with some marketing materials. They went to her and said, we need a clean logo. And so she came up with the idea of the swoosh. You know, the most iconic logo in the world in shoes. But Buck hated it. But he had no choice. He had to pick it because he was fighting with time. So they paid her $35 and said, thank you for this design, and we'll see you later. But now they have the logo, but they need the name. What name do they use? When they came up with names, Buck thought to himself, very hard I should say, Dimension 6. Not only did Buck almost lose his company, but he also has a bad taste in naming things. Thank God that Jeff was there and they came up with Nike. He came up with Nike because she was a goddess of victory. But Buck hated it. Let's just leave a mark here for all of us to remember. If Buck hates something, then it's great because Nike was both simple and anyone can remember it. So it was the perfect name. However, sadly, the first edition of the shoe was horrible. The soles of the shoe would split and crack in the winter. It was just a horrible shoe. But that wasn't the problem. You see, the problem that they were facing was the bank that was giving money to Buck said, after you pay us off, we're going to terminate our contract with you and we're not going to give you any more money. Buck needed a new investor. He needed an investor that understands that right now they're not making money, but later on they're going to make money. It's more about the future than right now. Now, them saying they're not making money wasn't actually them not making money, because you see, they were making $1.3 million a year and it was doubling every single year. And so the growth is there. They just needed someone that understands that. And so Buck went to Japan not to meet with Onitsuka Tiger, but to meet with a big trading company in Japan. This big trading company name is Nisho. Yes, their name is Nisho. And so Nisho sends Nike to some factories in Japan, owned by a company named Nippon Rubber. And they were part of Bridgestone, the tire company. And so that very day, Buck gave them some designs that he wanted them to make. And that shoe name was the Cortez. And by lunch, the prototype was in front of them. Fast workers. Just how as fast as I give you the information of these major brands. So subscribe to the channel. He was amazed by this, so he gave them more and more designs. Now yes, the samples weren't that great, but it was good enough for them. The other designs were tennis shoes, basketball shoes, running shoes, so on and so forth, of course. Now word travels really fast in Japan. And so if you do something, everyone in Japan is gonna know. And when you go to Nippon Rubber, Onitsuka Tiger is of course gonna know. And he felt betrayed. Deep down, he was like, oh no, how can you do this to me? And so he went to Buck and said, I will see you in court, you filthy person. And Buck replied very normally and said, yes, I will see you in court. He had one of the best master plans that he will ever come up with. And that master plan was to tell the courts how much Onitsuka Tiger actually tried to hurt them. Day 1 sent them late stuff. Day 2 tried to undermine them by going to other suppliers. And Day 3 were just bad people. And because of this, Blue Ribbon won. And now Onitsuka Tiger has to pay them $400,000. That is a win. That's great and all, but there's a problem. There's always a problem when it comes to Buck. That problem was that they needed to change factories. Well, why do they need to change factories? The yen and labor costs in Japan were going through the roof. And now you have to pay more to get the shoe. And when you pay more to get the shoe, you have to sell it for more. And now you are just hurting the consumer. And Buck loved the consumer. And so he opened a new factory in New Hampshire and still sold a bit of it from Japan. Blue Ribbon is growing now at a rate like it never did before. And this was hurting the cash flow. Because if you know who Buck is, he likes to put every single cent that he gets from the company back to the company. And what did I tell you last time? This is a bad idea, but he does not listen. And so when he needs more inventory, he has to get more cash. And getting more cash means you have to be on more debt. And when you're in more debt, you have to pay more stuff. And one day he had to pay $1 million in debt, but he was $75,000 short. And this was to Nisho. But he had another debt in Bank of California. However, the Nisho one is more important. And so he got all the cash from every single factory and store that he owned and made it to $1 million and sent it to Nisho. But he still hasn't paid the Bank of California. And we all know California does not play. And when you mess with California, they go running to the FBI. And that's what they did. They went running to the FBI FBI and said, "You are fraudulent." And now Buck might go to jail. He felt like his life is ruined. He's gonna get locked up for days and months and years. Maybe his whole life, you never know. And so he went to Japan to talk with Nisho as a last resort. And in this last resort, he told them, "How about you pay my debt? Because if you pay my debt, I will give you more money. Because Blue Ribbon is growing at a rate that's never been done before." And he was right. And Nisho was convinced, and they paid off all his debts and said, "Well, now you owe us." And so the Nike name was growing and growing and growing, and it's fighting with big names like Adidas and Puma. And 1 year later, after the 1976 Olympics, Nike made an astonishing $14 million in revenue. Yeah, but there's a problem. Yeah, it's cash. It's always cash with Buck. Oh my god. Just put some money away. Get a box, open it, and put some cash in it. He needs cash. He's always needing cash. And the only way to fix this cash problem was going public. But Buck didn't want to go public. And what did I say when I said Buck doesn't want something? It means it's good. However, this time he didn't really do what he was planning on doing and going public. He does what I do in a sticky situation. I say, "I'll go and eat, and I'll be right back to you." And I never come back. Now, in 1977, Buck actually met someone very important. His name was M. Frank Rudy. He was an aerospace engineer. Now, what does an aerospace engineer have to do with shoes? Well, he came to Nike with a new invention. He came up with pressurized airbags and shoes for their sole. But Nike hated it. He was like, "No, I don't want it." But then he heard something. He heard that this idea was given to Adidas and they said no. And he was like, "Yes, okay, give it to me. I want it better than Adidas. And I will use it and it will grow the company to a new level." And it did. And they made the Nike Air. Who would have guessed? Everything is going great. And if you know anything about what I say, when I say everything's going great, it's actually not. Because Nike got a letter from the US Customs Service. So what he did, he opened the letter, he took the letter out. He saw the big number that's in the middle of the paper and said, "I don't care." And put it back, closed the letter, and put it away. But what was the number? That number was so big, he was astonished. He was astonished. That number was $25 million. Yes, he had to pay $25 million to the US government. But why? Why does he need to pay $25 million when he has a problem with cash? He has to pay that amount because his competitors lobbied Washington. I don't want to name names, but it was Converse and other companies. They influenced Washington to use the ASP, or was known as the American Selling Price. Well, what is the ASP? Well, the ASP is when a similar shoe is manufactured in America, they increase the duty or taxes of the stuff that is imported into the US by 20% of the manufacturing price. And so Converse and fellow competitors made similar shoes to Nike and priced them so high up that they have to pay so much money. Nike was estimated on making $140 million that year. And so Buck went out and bought a $40,000 square foot building and made it his new headquarters. And he also bought 2 new factories. But the people in Washington wanted their money. They were like, "Come on, give us our money." And so he picked up the phone and said, "Well, hello, can you help me?" And everyone he called said no. And so he took it by his hands. And you know, Buck, if he takes stuff by the hand, he fixes it. He waited to fix it because he changed the name from Blue Ribbon to Nike, and now it is officially Nike Inc. And he wanted to go to China. It's kind of hard to go to China because you need an invitation from the Chinese government, and that's kind of hard to get, except when you know someone named David Chang. David Chang helped a lot of companies go to China. And when Nike went to China, they made a shoe that forced the US government to drop their money. Yes, you heard that right. The US government dropped the amount of money that Nike owed to the US government. But how? They made a running shoe with a nylon uppers called One Line. And this One Line was cheaper to make and it was cheaper to sell. And now the customs officials had a new price point to see. And what did they see? They saw Nike make a TV show about how he was a small business owner in Oregon and how he was fighting the big bad US government. And that pressurized the US government into dropping the amount from $25 million to 9. He only had to pay $9 million. That's it. Life is good. And like I said, when I say that, life isn't good because he still had a problem. Yes, that problem was cash. It was cash. He's always had that problem. It's not like in a day, it's just gonna go away. And so he finally made the decision that he was supposed to make years ago. He went public. He finally did it, but he wanted the majority sales. And so he got 56% to himself, 10% going to Bill and the old employees, and he took 46%, which is the majority. And now would you look at that? The cash problem is finally gone, and now I can go away. But I'm still not gone because I still have not finished the story, because I'm still talking about the history of Nike. And you cannot speak about the history of Nike and not say what happened in 1984. You see, in 1984, a young basketball player became a star. And that basketball player's name was Michael Jordan. And Nike went to Michael Jordan to make a shoe with him. But Jordan wanted to go to Adidas. However, Adidas didn't want him. Can you imagine? They missed out on the biggest basketball player at that time. And arguably the GOAT of basketball. And GOAT means greatest of all time. However, Michael had to settle with Nike, and he signed a 5-year contract, and he made the iconic Air Jordan 1. They were expected to make $3 or $4 million within 3 or 4 years. However, Jordan broke through that goal of $3 million within 3 or 4 years. He made $126 million in 1 year, in just 1 year. Can you imagine? He was so popular that they made his own brand, Jordan. You see, the Jordan is a brand called Brand Jordan. Now it's called Jordan Brand. And it's fighting with big names. And that's the beauty of Nike. They use the market to their advantage and reached the point where no one could fight against them. And if you can learn anything from this video, it's 1, cash flow matters. Don't be like Buck. Keep a cash flow when you're making a business. And 2, be like Nike. Become smart of the market. No, not just smart with the market, but they were smart with the employees that they employed. Because the employees that they employed knew what they were doing, like Jeff and Bill. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, watch the past no-show videos. Wait for the future no-show videos. Take a look at the description. And if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. And now I will go and eat a squid salad to see if I'll get a new invention for shoes. And so I'll see you there. Peace. Wait, no, I went there a lot. Let me go that way.